China's top legislature, the National People's Congress, to open its annual session Friday morning. 72 killed as Cyclone Amphan ravages eastern India and Bangladesh. And two-day-old premature baby becomes youngest South African to die of COVID-19. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe. Joining me with the day's business headlines is Uche.
Thank you, Peninah. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live Biz. French cabinet votes to end the use of the CFA franc in West Africa. And Nigerian banks adjust operations to cope with the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, more on that coming up within the program. For now, it is back to you, Peninah.
Thank you, Uche. China's top legislature, the National People's Congress, will open its annual session on Friday morning in Beijing. Today, it's revealed the 9 items on its agenda. Lawmakers will deliberate on the government's work report, as well as on the implementation of the 2019 plan and the 2020 draft plan for national economic and social development. They will also cover budget reports. The highlights include deliberations on a draft civil code submitted by the NPC Standing Committee and a bill on improving the legal system and enforcement mechanisms for safeguarding national security in Hong Kong. Also on Thursday, China's top political advisory body, the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, or CPPCC, held its opening ceremony, listing achievements over the past year. Our reporter Sui Huiao has more.
More than 2,000 national political advisors have convened in Beijing, marking the official start of China's high political season, which normally takes place in March. At the opening session, they paid silent tribute to those who have lost their lives in the epidemic. In his opening address, CPPCC's chairman Wang Yang said the CPPCC has played an active role in fighting the pandemic.
We have been encouraging members to use mobile platforms to carry out their tasks in COVID-19 prevention and control, resume work, and strengthen legal governance. Members submitted more than 1,300 proposals and held 3 lectures on combating COVID-19. 85% of members have taken part in online surveys on the battle. Members on the front line also sent proposals. All this shows their sense of duty and responsibility.
In his work report, Wang Yang listed the committee's achievements in the past year, including promoting a mechanism for high-quality governance and improving the well-being of the people.
In ethnic minority regions, we have made consultations and advised on how to consolidate the results of poverty elimination and prevent people falling back into poverty. We have made key proposals like agricultural rejuvenation and a quality tracing system for agricultural products. We also convened education workshops and we held discussions on other issues, including employment, healthcare, and care for the elderly.
Going forward, Wang said the CPPCC would continue to adhere to the leadership of the Communist Party of China, build a consensus among its members, and make their voices heard. In the next 6 days, CPPCC members will contribute ideas on how the country should move forward as it has made progress on containing COVID-19. And it's not just providing ideas, but also mapping out plans for some of the key issues such as epidemic prevention and poverty alleviation. Their insights and strength are exactly what the country needs in challenging times like now. Cu Huiao, CGTN, Beijing.
A spokesperson for the National People's Congress says China is still an attractive destination for foreign investment.
Economy runs its own course. The global industrial chain that we see today is shaped by many factors over the years, and it is also a result of the behaviors and choices of businesses across the world. As such, it cannot be changed by any single country. Economic globalization is a historical trend. While COVID-19 will surely affect globalization in many ways, with complicated implications. But this historical process will not be reversed. As far as China is concerned, well, it is true that COVID-19 does have some effect on foreign businesses operating in China, but there is no flight of foreign capital, and China is still an attractive destination for foreign investment. Foreign investors remain optimistic about China and remain confident in their long-term.
China says it will continue to uphold multilateralism, safeguard free trade, and facilitate reform and improvement of the global governance system. It also said peaceful cooperation and mutual respect are key to China-US relations.
Economy runs its own course. The global industrial chain that we see today is shaped by many factors over the years, and it is also a result of the behaviors and choices of businesses across the world. As such, it cannot be changed by any single country. Economic globalization is a historical trend. While COVID-19 will surely affect globalization in many ways, with complicated implications, but this historical process will not be reversed. As far as China is concerned, well, it is true that COVID-19 does have some effect on foreign businesses operating in China, but there is no flight of foreign capital, and China is still an attractive destination for foreign investment. Foreign investors remain optimistic about China and remain confident in their long-term operation in China.
The convening of China's two sessions has attracted attention in Zambia. The director of the Belt and Road Joint Research Center of the University of Zambia, Sande Ngalande, has said he's looking forward to favorable resolutions that will come out of the two sessions. Ngalande also hopes for the rapid recovery of China's economy so that it may have a positive impact on the recovery of other nations. He says that the current coronavirus pandemic has had a negative impact on the African continent. Ngalande hopes that the decisions made by leaders at this summit will not only promote China's own economic development, but also help the global economy.
Looking forward to the PC and CPPCC coming up with resolutions that are going to ensure a speedy recovery of the Chinese economy. If the Chinese economy recovers very quickly, that has a ripple effect on how other economies in the world are going to perform. Here in Africa, the COVID-19 has really had very negative effects on our economies, and we hope that the decisions of the PC and CPPCC are not only building China, but building the global cooperation, global economy, and strengthening everybody to come out of this very difficult time.
A powerful cyclone tore into eastern India and Bangladesh on Wednesday, killing 72 people and causing massive destruction to crops and property. About 3 million people were evacuated from the path of Cyclone Amphan, one of the most powerful storms in the region for decades. Our correspondent Ravinda Bawa has more details.
Cyclone Amphan rammed into the eastern coastline of India on Wednesday, uprooting trees, damaging property, and dislocating millions. The cyclone made a landfall with gusting winds ranging from 155 to 165 kilometers per hour. According to the Met Department, this cyclone created a multi-hazard scenario.
It's a cyclone which is constituted of heavy rain, strong winds, and tidal wave or storm surge. All these are existing together, generating a multi-hazard scenario. And we anticipate damage in the agricultural sector, industrial sector, and in the socio-economic sector.
The cyclone disrupted power supply and communications in most places. Maximum damage is done in the areas where the landfall was first registered. The emergency response teams on the ground have started relief and rescue operations.
We have cut 10 to 15 trees so far and have almost cleared the road. We have many more challenges and we are working hard on it. We are trying to clear the road as soon as possible so that this does not pose a problem to people while traveling.
The cyclone has moved towards northeastern India, which is experiencing heavy to very heavy rainfall. The officials have started assessing the destruction done by the cyclone. In a matter of just a few hours, many have lost their houses to the storm and now they have nowhere to go. Ravinder Bava, CGTN, Delhi.
Globally, over 5 million COVID-19 cases have been reported. Africa continues to report a small fraction of those cases. Across the continent, over 96,000 cases have been reported, with around 39,000 recoveries confirmed. The death toll stands at over 3,000. The World Health Organization has warned nearly 250 million Africans could contract COVID-19 in the first year. WHO experts also warned Africa could face a prolonged outbreak over the coming years. Let's take a closer look now at Northern Africa. The region has the highest recorded number of cases on the continent. Egypt leads the region with over 14,000 cases reported. Algeria, which follows Egypt in confirmed cases, will be tightening lockdown measures during Eid al-Fitr. The religious holiday marks the end of the fasting month of Ramadan. Muslims in Algeria usually celebrate with a two-day feast. The government will impose a curfew from 1 p.m. to 7 a.m. during these 2 days. Authorities are also discouraging visiting family and public gatherings. Looking at West Africa, where Senegalese authorities have pledged that a bed will be made available for every coronavirus patient. It's part of the country's mitigation strategy to try and isolate and observe all patients, no matter how mild these symptoms may be. Nigeria, in the meantime, has seen an increase of reports of people falling ill in its most popular state, Kano. President Muhammadu Buhari extended a lockdown in the northern state until the end of the month. This comes as other parts of the country are easing lockdown measures. In East Africa, Sudan has reported the highest number of confirmed cases. Kenya, meanwhile, has recorded over 1,000 cases. Its regional neighbor, Rwanda, is looking to reduce the risk of COVID-19 spreading in its jails. Over 3,500 convicts were conditionally released. Only those convicted of minor offenses were eligible for release. In Central Africa, Cameroon has the highest number of recorded cases with over 3,500 confirmed. President Paul Biya made his first televised address to the country in over 2 months. Biya urged Cameroonians to follow measures put in place by the government. He also asked citizens not to panic and to refrain from spreading false information. And in the south, South Africa has reported just over 19,000 cases. Zambia is a distant second with less than 1,000 cases. More than half of the country's cases have been recorded in Nakonde. The town borders Tanzania, which has not imposed any lockdown measures. Zambian authorities shut the border post last week in an effort to curb the spread of COVID-19. A two-day-old premature baby has become South Africa's youngest victim to die of COVID-19, and the official death toll now stands at 400, according to the Health Ministry. The country's Western Cape province is the epicenter of the disease, with over 60% of South Africa's more than 19,000 infections. Renee Delcam, who is in self-quarantine at home at the moment, has the following report.
As autumn turns to winter in South Africa, COVID-19 cases are set to surge and peak in the coming months. Authorities say community transmission of the disease in the Western Cape is spreading at a faster rate in certain hotspots, such as townships around the city of Cape Town and the wine-growing region of Witzenberg. Workers in essential services, such as the retail sector and law enforcement, are amongst the hardest hit. And yet another nurse has lost her battle with the disease in the past few days.
We have a rapidly increasing epidemic with increases in hospitalization and in deaths. The Premier has referred to the fact that we've gone over 200 deaths. We are on the upward part of the curve, which is the nature of the pandemic. So we're truly in the uptake of the epidemic phase in the Western Cape, specifically in the Cape Metro.
The Western Cape's #1 mission now is to protect vulnerable people with a greater focus on testing those at higher risk, especially people over the age of 55 who suffer from comorbidities such as diabetes, HIV, hypertension, and TB.
We're saying that our health system should actually manage these higher risk cases with greater attention. It is looking after the vulnerable, making sure that they are safe, and putting our energies and efforts into them because they are the likely group of people that is likely to be iller if they get COVID and land up in a hospital that might require them to land up in an intensive care unit.
Western Cape Premier Alan Winde says health officials have used the past few weeks of the country's national lockdown to prepare its healthcare system for the expected upward curve in COVID-19 cases. But he says his province needs to ease its lockdown restrictions as soon as possible.
We really need to avert the opposite side of the spectrum. We need to avert the humanitarian disaster, the jobs bloodbath. We need to make sure that we are getting the response right, balancing it correctly, and we need to allow the economy to open up with the new normal, making sure that we're following the rules and not spreading the virus in a way that is actually going to really put our health system under severe pressure, and then we will not be able to cope. But we've got to make sure we find the balance.
The Premier says most people infected with COVID-19 will recover, but at least 200,000 jobs in the Western Province have already been lost. Renee Dalcom, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
You're watching Africa Live. We're taking a short break. Coming up, the fate of Nigerians with visual impairment. How do they observe social distancing? And Ugandan Sign Language interpreters become crucial in communicating COVID-19 information. Across Africa, citizens are adjusting to new measures that look to curb the spread of COVID-19. Nigeria has enforced guidelines such as social distancing in public spaces. For the visually impaired, these measures bring about their own unique set of challenges. CGTN's Astatal has more.
Touch. Touch is one of our 5 senses. In the post-COVID-19 world, regulations such as social distancing means the world is much more cautious when it comes to touching surfaces or people. For those who are visually impaired, touch is an essential part of getting around. Lawal used to rely on strangers to help her cross the busy streets of Lagos. That is no longer the case.
Now I want to cross the road and there's no way I can cross the road unless I call someone to help me. So I called my friend living around this area now to come and help me to cross the main road. Share notification. Recent. Tab. To the phone. Send message. No. Hello? I'm in the bus stop. Please, can you come and help me to cross? I'm in around your area.
Lawal is a baker and aspiring blogger. The restrictions, she says, have hit her like a bomb. She isn't alone. Shobowale used to venture around Lagos. Now he stays in a church-owned shelter. He and his friends call home.
At the point, I even found one person that told me that, okay, let's go, but I know if you owed you. At the point I felt I could cope, I was bombing on veins and stuffs, and I just had to stay Like, I just let the person go because I could not even call the person back to say, excuse me, because I don't even know how the person will feel if I would tell him that he should hold me, that I am corona free. I can't explain, I can't prove myself innocent.
While Lawal still ventures out, she has had to add an extra step to every journey. Before crossing a busy street, she has to stop and call a friend to help her cross. Asta Tao, CGTN.
Uganda's sign language interpreters have played a critical role during the COVID-19 pandemic. Present during public health announcements, they have been communicating information and updates to the country's hearing-impaired community. Leon Senyange tells us more.
The common face at every media briefing. Jonan Opori is the man with the expressive hand gestures. Sign language interpretation is something he has been doing for 2 decades now.
Sign language is a visual language, and we need to see, leave alone the hands. The hands will be communicating, but the message is on your face. 54% of the message is on the body language.
As briefings proceed, he translates what's being said for the hearing impaired.
You need to interact with deaf people. You need to love them first of all, and interact with them and love the language. So the more you understand the concept, you understand the language and you interact, you build on your vocabulary.
And his work has been even more important in the past 2 months since the COVID-19 crisis began. There are over 1 million people in Uganda who are deaf or with hearing impairments, and access to information during these critical times is crucial to keeping the deaf community safe and out of danger of contracting the virus. It's the hands of sign language interpreters that have come in handy for these young deaf students. They have been able to understand the health information surrounding the outbreak.
We have been told about COVID, how it started, where it came from, and how we can protect ourselves. There have been many messages.
The crisis has been a busy time for the interpreters. They also hope it will be a chance to create more awareness of access to sign language.
Our only issue now is to ensure that we sustain this, because we have come in as Uganda National Association of the Deaf and Uganda National Association of Sign Language Interpreters to bridge this gap at this time during the COVID pandemic. What happens after COVID?
Getting information out has been a priority and has helped advance the discussion here about the importance of sign language interpreters. Leon Senyange, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Meanwhile, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni is encouraging people to ration food during the lockdown period. The government has extended restrictions for 2 more weeks and is concerned that those affected may find it hard to get enough food. According to government figures, 1.5 million people in urban centers around the capital Kampala were in need of food assistance 2 months ago. But officials now say this number is steadily going up. CGTN's Hilary Ayesiga reports.
A president-turned-chief, President Yoweri Museveni is measuring portions of food that he says could be enough for a family. He wants people to save food for hard times ahead.
If you take the other 250, you can get 10 meals out of this. And if you lunch and supper, that will take you 5 days.
The government has so far distributed food to 1.4 million residents.
We have served 1,427,411 people. And remember, our target was 1.5 million people. So in terms of food distribution in various parts of the Kampala and Wakiso and Mukono, our target is almost getting met. However, I know and I'm aware that as far as our budget is concerned, there's still more money within the budget which will feed additional bigger number of people. It is also true, what we found in the field is clear that there are more vulnerable people and there are more people who have been affected by the guidelines.
Each person is entitled to 3 kilograms of beans and 6 kilograms of maize flour. The government believes that this food will be enough to take them for at least a month. The beneficiaries say it's timely.
We will be cooking little by little to make sure that it will push us at least for some days.
It is still unclear when the country will lift the lockdown, which has been in place for 2 months. But government says they have a plan to help more families in need.
I'm happy we have a plan for the recovery on how to support the small-scale, medium traders for purposes of seeing how they can get back.
So this one.
The government believes rationing food will help families get through the hard times of COVID-19. But there is no firm end date in sight yet. Hilary Yesiga, CGTN, Kampala.
The National Institute of Communicable Diseases in South Africa has been at the forefront of the fight against COVID-19. It has been used as the first point of testing for the virus and also validating results for other laboratories. Angela Kupla tells us more.
The Institute has been testing for the virus since the end of January, when the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a public health emergency. Concerns are now being raised internationally about a second wave of infections.
We're in our first wave now, and we've moved from just isolated cases related to travelers quite rapidly into quite widespread community transmission. So we're very much in our first wave, and the epidemic curve was flattened, so to speak, probably related to the lockdown, but the cases are, as expected, starting to increase in most parts of the country. We are moving from, I think, focusing on community testing, picking up hotspots, testing people who've got symptoms that would suggest COVID, really into prioritizing now. I think hospitalized patients, patients with pneumonia, healthcare workers who may have symptoms, selected patients who are going into hospitals have to be the focus of our testing. It really is overwhelming otherwise, and I think we need to prioritize the patients where a result is important for management and for infection control in health facilities.
The health authorities are caught in a difficult position. They need to increase the amount of testing, but there are challenges.
There absolutely is a challenge. We're competing with the rest of the world for reagents, for kits. We would like to move into the cartridge testing, the more near-patient testing with PCR, but there simply aren't enough to go around the world.
While much of the authorities' attention is taken up with fighting COVID-19, there are other priorities.
We need to be sure that we don't neglect our other important disease programs, TB, HIV, malaria, chronic diseases, non-communicable diseases. The focus is on COVID, but the burden of communicable and non-communicable diseases in Africa and South Africa are huge. And so, we need this balance. It's really a tough time.
Testing has become a way of life for most South Africans, and it's going to continue like this into the future until we start managing this virus. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
You're watching Africa Live. Let's recap our top stories this hour. China's top legislature, the National People's Congress, will open its annual session on Friday morning in Beijing. Lawmakers will deliberate on the government's work report as well as on the implementation of the 2019 plan and the 2020 draft plan for national economic and social development. They will also cover budget reports. On Thursday, China's top political advisory body, the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, or the CPPCC, held its opening ceremony listing achievements over the past year. A 2-day-old premature baby has become South Africa's youngest victim to die of COVID-19. The official death toll in the country now stands at 419,137 confirmed cases. That's according to the Health Ministry. And a powerful cyclone tore into eastern India and Bangladesh on Wednesday, killing 72 people and causing massive destruction to crops and property. About 3 million people have been evacuated from the path of Cyclone Amphan, one of the most powerful storms in the region for decades. And that's a look at our top stories this hour. Time now for the day's business news with Uche.
Thank you, Peninah. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. The French cabinet votes to end the use of the CFA franc in West Africa. And Nigerian banks adjust operations to cope with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
Now, France's cabinet has approved a draft proposal that allows West African nations to officially drop the CFA franc. The West African Economic and Monetary Union member states have now moved a step closer to adopting the new common currency known as the ECO. The draft bill also ends an era where the Bank of France centrally held the currency reserves for Francophone nations. The bill now awaits the approval of France's parliament. Now, supporters of the new currency say it will deepen financial integration in West Africa. The ECO currency is expected to be pegged to the euro. Of course, critics of the CFA franc, currently used in nearly 10 countries, have termed it as a relic from colonial times. And in Rwanda, the country's economic growth is expected to go down to 2% this year from 9.4% in 2019 as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, the crisis is expected to hit tourism, transport, and the hospitality sector. While presenting the draft budget for 2020 and 2021 fiscal year, Finance Minister Uziel Ndajigmana said that growth was expected to rebound next year to 6.3% and improve further to 8% in 2022. Now, Rwanda plans to increase spending by 7.5% in that fiscal year to $3.43 billion. About 15% of the budget will come from donors, with the rest coming from revenue and debt. Rwanda also plans to borrow about $822 million, but has not given any details on this. Now, like other East African nations, it will present its final budget this June. It has suspended international passenger travel. It has restricted movement and banned social gatherings as well in order to contain the novel coronavirus. Well, heading to Egypt now, the country's Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli has approved a draft law cutting the net monthly income of state employees by about 1% and pensioners' net monthly income by 0.5%. Now, the measures, which take effect as of the 1st of July, will last for about a year. The move is meant to alleviate the economic impact as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. However, Egyptians whose net monthly income does not exceed $126 are exempt from the deduction under the new law. The cabinet may also exempt those who work in sectors negatively affected by the pandemic. The funds raised from the deductions will boost plans to disperse financial and in-kind aid, as well as finance medical research and develop the healthcare system. Now in Nigeria, deposit money banks across the country are now adjusting their operations and introducing measures for customers to access banking halls. Lenders in Africa's biggest economy were given the green light to resume operations earlier this month. That's after the government announced the gradual easing of restrictions to curb the spread of COVID-19. From Lagos, here's more on that from CGTN's Deji Badmus.
This was the situation across virtually every bank in Lagos and Abuja about 2 weeks ago when the government eased the lockdown on both cities. Customers flooded banks to make transactions, completely disregarding government guidelines on social distancing. Some even had to sleep at banks' premises to be able to gain access the next morning. Unexpectedly, tempers flared up most of the time.
Please, I want to ask, is it a problem to open an account again? If I should work and save money, why can't I have access to my money? Since I have not have anything good to eat, and I can't possibly stand on the road and be begging people for money to eat, it's not possible.
We have 4 access banks in this road, and the whole access bank, only one branch is working, and which is very bad. Some of us was here since yesterday, we collected number, and they refused to give us.
A fortnight later, and the situation is gradually returning to normal. Banks have since opened more branches and extended working hours. The crowd is thinning out, and there's now more order. Customers are required to sit under canopies and are then called into the banking hall in turns, but only after washing their hands and having their temperatures taken. It's the new normal for banking operations in the country, but some customers are still divided over the process.
It's fair because they call you in based on the number, and then based on the service you have come to the bank to get. So that will determine which desk you're going. For example, I'm here for transfer. 3 of us were on the queue for transfer, but only one person can go in at that time, so I had to wait for my turn.
Let me be honest with you, like a businessman like me, it has not been convenience for me. So many times you came here to withdraw cash, you see a large number of the people, and the time limit is affecting us. And also we have been standing on the canopy here waiting for our own time to reach. So the time have not been convenient for us, and we are not okay with it, I beg. Let the federal government do something about it. Increase the time.
For now, banks in the West African nation are only allowed to operate between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. when all businesses are expected to shut down for the day before the curfew at 8 p.m. Most of the banks have continued to keep some of their branches short until when they consider it safe to fully reopen to the public. So until that happens, customers would simply have to put up with the prevailing situation. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Meanwhile, Tunisia's government has announced that over 2,000 companies have now registered on an electronic platform, which is designed to alleviate the impact of COVID-19. At the same time, the North African economy says the credit line support for small and medium enterprises will be increased to $500 million. With more on this, here's CGTN's Adnan Shaushi.
The government spokesperson noted that the 2,390 companies have submitted 5,270 applications to benefit from fiscal and financial measures to overcome the economic repercussions of this crisis.
The distribution of the exceptional grants and aid to the SMEs has already started in order to minimize economic damage. The list had been updated, and it's clear that we'll receive more applications from businesses in difficulty.
The amount of the credit line to support SMEs has been increased. This credit can reach 25% of the company's turnover, with the ceiling set at $300 million. The first deadline for the repayment of these loans has been set for June 2021.
The amount has been increased to $500 million to provide credit for the enterprises affected by this crisis. The conditions are very simple, and the state is the guarantor in this operation.
Experts assert that Tunisia's main economic partners, especially in Europe, are taking a substantial hit that will have a direct impact on the country's SMEs, which export their products.
The global health crisis has turned into an economic crisis that will not spare any country. Economic growth in the world will be negative with terrifying effects. we must be ready for the aftermath.
The Ministry of Finance has launched a new online platform for the supervision and support of companies affected by the economic fallout of the general lockdown and the coronavirus crisis. The new measures in favor of small and medium-sized enterprises, the pillar of the country's economy, aim at maintaining over 100,000 jobs and ensuring the sustainability of affected businesses. The Tunisian Confederation of Industry has urged the government to mobilize more resources to support Tunisian companies. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Now, French energy major Total has secured $14.4 billion funding for its liquefied natural gas project in Mozambique. Now, Total reached a financing agreement with a group that includes around 20 lenders for the first phase of its debt funding. The identity of the banks involved in the financial arrangement have not been released yet. Information released to the media indicated that Total was set to sign $15 billion in financing for the project in June. The company expects the financing to be closed in the third quarter. Total concluded the acquisition of Anadarko's 26.5% interest in the Mozambique LNG project for about $3.9 billion in September. It is expected to start production in 2024, but Total is yet to comment on that report. Meanwhile, German aviation giant Lufthansa confirmed that it was in talks with the German government over a rescue plan. Early information shows that the deal may be worth up to 9 billion euros. But the concept still faces opposition from some politicians who do not support excessive state involvement in private business. Others argue that Berlin has the right to influence business decisions that may lead to potential job cuts. A Lufthansa shareholders meeting and the European Commission must also give their blessings to any rescue package. Now, aviation has been one of the sectors hardest hit by the coronavirus pandemic. Airlines are now coping with a sudden drop in passengers, while at the same time dealing with health security issues, of course, caused by the pandemic. Here's Owen Fairclough with more from Washington.
COVID-19 is transforming our lives, and nowhere less so than in how we fly. Just as the 9/11 attacks brought in sweeping new measures designed to stop terrorism, coronavirus is bringing a whole new layer of health security.
Washington, D.C.'s Ronald Reagan Airport is almost deserted, a scene replicated at check-in desks across the world. But some airports and airlines are bringing in temperature checks and contemplating other controls, including immunity passports, confirming you're not infectious, and sanitizing baggage. And they're all time-consuming.
If you're told to arrive an hour and a half ahead for a domestic flight today, I would give yourself at least 2 hours and probably 2.5 just to get through all of these steps.
And security screening is already adapting.
Some of the changes brought about by the pandemic mean abandoning the old rules. We're all used to the regulations limiting the size of liquids that can be taken on board aircraft.
But passengers in the US are now allowed to take on board up to 12 ounces of hand sanitizer, much bigger than this traditional travel-size container. That may help limit the spread of infection. But there's a contentious debate over airlines potentially blocking the middle aisle seats in economy class for social distancing. Australian carrier Qantas says it won't do it. And the head of the global airline regulator thinks it's a bad idea.
It means that you will have to increase your fares by 50% at least. So in terms of what travel represents in our societies, it means that cheap travel is over.
But some argue airlines won't raise fares for economy customers because they need them in the short term to restore revenues once driven by first class and business passengers.
I think what you'll see is that this recovery in the airline industry is going to be driven first and foremost by leisure travelers, you and me.
Whatever class you fly, experts say for the foreseeable future, expect a much lower level of service, from no onboard food and drink offered to bringing your own in-flight entertainment, all to minimise contact. Owen Fairclough, CGTN, Washington.
Well, that is all for now on Africa Live Biz, but ahead on Global Business Africa, France gives a green light to a new francophone currency. We'll have the details from Paris, of course, at the top of the hour. For now, it is back to you, Peninah.
Thank you, Uche. You're watching Africa Live, still ahead. A group of Ugandans is making biodegradable face masks. We'll tell you how.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Peninah, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
More people are now wearing masks to reduce chances of contracting COVID-19. Masks have become must-have accessories during the coronavirus pandemic, sparking creativity among fashion designers. In Uganda, a social enterprise is training people with disabilities to recycle plastic and blend it with African fabric for use in face masks and other garments. Peninah Karibe tells us more.
Tons of plastic thrown away are given a unique African spin. Chimoli fashion designs in Uganda are plastic sheeting accessories with African fabrics that are customized by people with disabilities.
We look for them in their communities, mentor them, coach them, because even convincing them to learn these skills, it's also hard. They have their perception that the other perception, the old perception that for them, because they're being seen as a caste, they're being demoralized, they think even them, they cannot do anything.
So far, the group has recycled more than 50,000 kilos of plastic waste into useful products like jackets and bags. Many of the products are sold to tourists for between $5 and $50. The group is now prioritizing making face masks after the government ordered people to always wear them in public. Some of the masks are customized uniquely with transparent plastic sheets for people with disabilities.
And for this, it is specifically to people with hearing impairments, people who cannot hear and talk. Remember, when they are talking, you have to focus on two things. You have to focus on the movement of the mouth, and you have to focus on the signs. So, and also the eyes. The facial impression is really key. So when they use like these categories of mask, they cannot communicate because you've covered their means of communication.
About 50 people with disabilities have been empowered with tailoring skills, and during this lockdown they've been able to use their sewing skills to earn some money from making face masks. This production facility in Mpigi outside the capital Kampala is using 30% of the proceeds from the garments to buy sewing machines. They will be donated to people with disabilities so they can become self-reliant. Agnes Nabagara is one of the beneficiaries of this initiative by Chimoli Fashion Designs. Even though she can't speak and hear, she's able to sew and earn a living.
I work hard and produce enough products and earn a reasonable amount of money. I save some and use the rest to take care of my child and even educate her.
50% of proceeds from the garments sold are now being used to make basic face masks, which are distributed to vulnerable communities like boda riders and market vendors. The designers say they will continue recycling plastic waste even after the COVID-19 pandemic and better their lives in the process. Peninah Karibe, CGTN Mpigi, Uganda.
And ahead in sports. African pole vault champion Dora Mahfoudi volunteers as a doctor with the COVID-19 task force.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Dora Mahfoudi is a 27-year-old Tunisian African pole vault champion. She is continuing her training during the coronavirus lockdown and still finds time to help out as a volunteer doctor.
Dora is a former gymnastics champion. Her family moved to the capital city Tunis when she was 15. That's when she fell in love with this sport discipline. Learning to vault was hard, and winning domestic, regional and continental tournaments was even harder for the young champion.
I've been to many competitions. I win the Arab championships and many African championships from the juniors to seniors. The last one was last year in August. It was the African Games in Morocco, and in this competition I did my best. It's 4:31 and it's the national record.
Ayed Berhaim is the national coach of the pole vault team. He has trained hundreds of Tunisian champions. Ayed says that working during the period of the general lockdown is the most challenging experience in his 30-year career.
The confinements and the lockdown have complicated the training of our champion. The easing of restrictions has allowed us to return to the training. We are adapting the exercises to this natural environment. Champions must cope with challenges.
In addition to her successful sporting career, Dora is also a brilliant fifth-year medical student. She pursues her studies at the prestigious Faculty of Medicine. She is also volunteering with the emergency units of the COVID-19 task force.
Before the corona crisis, I was dedicating all my time to my sports career. I was trying to qualify to the Tokyo Olympic Games. We have to take analysis from people suspected with the coronavirus disease. The thing that helped me here, which I took from my athlete career as a professional one, is the stress management. I can deal in big...
This is where she trains and manages stress. Dora Mahfoudi has recently helped a woman give birth at home during the general lockdown. The talented lady has become an icon in the North African country. The Tunisian champion will continue saving lives as a medical worker with eyes on the Tokyo Olympics. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
We cross over to the English Premier League, where the UK Secretary